Hello everybody and welcome back to my little YouTube channel. If you're new to this channel, my name's Amanda and I'm a diagnosed autistic adult. In today's video I want to talk a little bit about autism in adults. Autism is something that's commonly talked about in children, which is a really good thing because obviously children are still in that developmental stage, and so children really do require autism support. But I think a lot of society forgets that we as autistic adults were also autistic children once as well. And I think unfortunately, especially in the UK and I'm sure in other countries as well, adults tend to get forgotten about. I don't like using that word, but we tend to get sort of about one support appointment after our official autism appointment, and then we tend to get forgotten about and we're pushed then to the mental health side of it for like anxiety support and things like counselling and cognitive behavioural therapies, and that's really kind of the hospital practices to offer those services to us. But of course, autistic people, we tend to see and feel the world much differently to neurotypical people, to those people that don't have autism, and as a result of that we might require counselling and cognitive behavioural therapies much different to our neurotypical peers. And so a lot of the time the treatment that's offered to autistic adults isn't suitable for us, and we just can't cope with it for our neurodevelopmental reasons. And so I want to talk a little bit about autism in adults. So if you're an autistic adult, or if you're an adult and you suspect you've got autism, this video is definitely for you. Now you'll hear lots of birdie background noises because I've just given them the nice little treat. So I've just been bird watching and it's made me really happy today. I'm ecstatic watching the crows, which are my favourite animals. So if you can hear the birds and the crows talking to me, they are having a party in the background. So before we get going on with this video, I want to talk a little bit about what autism is. And now I know I keep saying it, you keep probably saying to me, Amanda, you've already told me what autism is a billion times, but there might be those people that are just tuning into this video that don't know what autism is, or they're wanting to learn more about autism. So autism is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's a genetic condition. We have it our entire lives. So I'm an autistic adult. I was once an autistic baby and an autistic child. It's genetic, so we think that and it's even been suggested that my dad might have autism, although he doesn't want to go for an autism assessment, which is understandable. For a lot of people don't, for their own reasons, but we think that maybe it's been passed on through my dad's family, and I've developed autism from my dad. I mean, obviously that's not set in stone, which means we don't absolutely know that for sure. I can't bet my life on that, but that's what we think. And so it's a genetic condition, and usually it's passed down through one of the immediate members of your family, like a parent, for example. So if you've got autism, it could be, and I said it a few times because I'm not saying that this is exactly absolutely true, but it could be that one of your parents is also autistic. Don't be suggesting it to your parents if you're uncomfortable with that, or if you might offend somebody, but that could be the case. It's usually passed down through a parent, or it's absolutely passed down through the genetic line. So we know through science it's genetic, and it affects every single aspect of our lives. Autistic people, we see the world differently. That goes for colours. We hear the world differently. That goes for sounds. We might be more sensitive to loud sounds and noises, for example. We taste the world differently, and we sense the world differently as well, and that can go for all sorts of different things: the touch and the feeling of things, the taste and the feeling and textures of foods, and all that sort of stuff. So it really encompasses our entire existence, our entire lives. And so the world can feel like an incredibly alien place to autistic people, and we tend to like patterns, and we like things, we like routines, and we like consistency, and so we don't like unpredictability, and so we can get incredibly anxious in our day-to-day lives in comparison to our neurotypical peers. And so it can really have disabling effects on our quality of life. And a lot of autistic adults might appear to be okay, like I probably appear to be okay to you now, because I'm talking to you on this camera and I'm coming across as this confident person. But actually I'm masking, I'm camouflaging. And I've done a separate video on that, check it out. I will do another video on masking and camouflaging, a more in-depth video on that. But I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not, so that I can be accepted. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have maintained my job position in the National Health Service for nearly 20 years. And so it affects autistic people massively in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day setting. And that's just a little bit about autism. Check out I'll leave a link in the comment section below, my video entitled What is Autism, and that'll give you more information. But that is autism in a nutshell, and now I'm going to talk about autism and how it affects autistic adults. So coming back to what I previously said, I was an autistic child at one point, and I'm now an autistic adult. And although in many ways it was probably much easier for me as a child, because I didn't have the pressures put on me then in terms of keeping a job, maintaining employment, having to go to work and pay bills, for example, having to try and mingle and make relationships with people and do the things that are generally accepted in this day-to-day world. It was probably much easier then, although I'm not saying that autistic children have got it easy, and they certainly haven't, and certainly parents don't, or parents to autistic children have an absolutely really difficult time. And of course when I was a child I put my dad through absolute living hell, so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying and think that I'm saying that autistic children have got a free pass, because they absolutely haven't. But all I'm trying to say is that we're forgotten as autistic adults a lot of the time, and of course we've then had to navigate the social environment and the employment and the relationships and the responsibilities of adulthood with autism. And of course we try incredibly hard in our day-to-day lives, and of course on top of that we suffer with anxieties and depression, and so navigating that adult life with autism, and then adding on to that having no to little support, is incredibly difficult. Now, a lot of autistic adults, coming back to what I've just said previously, we do this thing called camouflaging or masking, and that makes other people believe that we're functioning fine, whereas children probably are able to sort of more embrace their authentic selves. So, I mean, it's probably different for females, child females, or female children that are on the autism spectrum who may also mask. But adults, in order to get through our lives, we might appear to be functioning fine, and so it can be incredibly difficult for doctors and nurses and healthcare practitioners and hospitals, and even the neuro diversity centres themselves, the autism specialists themselves, to pick up that we are on the autism spectrum. And so sometimes we can act and we can pretend and we can mask our autism traits incredibly well. And that means that although it's good for other people and employers, and it seems that we're high functioning, and I very rarely use that term high functioning because of what I'm going to say now, it usually means nothing. We are absolutely not high functioning, we're absolutely struggling, and it's usually those people that mask so well that suffer from the long-term effects of depression and anxiety. And you've heard the classic actors on television, on the news, that have got depression and have they've done something because they're feeling so low and so down, and then everybody says, but they seem so happy, they was always smiling, they was always bubbly, and that is exactly it for autistic adults who come across as being okay or functioning. This act that we put on in order to succeed in life, in order to get through life, might be fantastic for everybody else around them, for the family and the friends and the employers who think that we're coping okay, but for us as autistic adults, it's absolutely detrimental for our health. And it's so frightening when doctors and nurses, not their fault because we're acting so well, but when these people don't pick up on our underlying feelings, or maybe when we go for appointments and they ask us, are you feeling okay, and we say yes, when doctors and nurses maybe don't probe deeper to that and try and find out whether we are actually feeling okay or whether we're actually masking and camouflaging in order to people please or to be accepted. And it's frightening that a lot of these symptoms and signs are missed in autistic adults, and it can lead to absolutely devastating effects. Now, a lot of the signs and symptoms for autistic adults are exactly the same as that for children. It's just adding on this masking that I've just previously talked about. And I've talked about masking in this video for a reason, because it's really important to understand the effect that long-term masking has on autistic adults. And now, the whole thing about autistic masking and symptoms and signs in autistic adults, they all are part of the same thing. So this video isn't necessarily about all autistic masking, but it really is something that is central to the core of this video, because when we are suppressing our true authentic selves, and I'll come into that a little bit more in this video, we are stopping the world from seeing how we really feel and who we truly are as a person, and it's absolutely exhausting. And so a lot of the time, autistic people, or people that maybe they're not been diagnosed with autism, autistic adults, go to the doctors feeling tired and exhausted and no longer able to maintain employment and those sort of scenarios, and the doctors will diagnose depression. And although there is co-occurring conditions that go alongside autism, such as anxieties and depression, a lot of the time although it can be depression, and one of the knock-on effects of long-term autistic masking can be depression, but a lot of the times it can be misdiagnosed as depression when actually we was masking all along. And so if that adult is picked up as being depressed, we might miss out on an autism assessment referral, and we might miss out on the appropriate support to receive from autism, and we might receive support for depression and anxiety, such as counselling and cognitive behavioural therapies, and those things that doctors commonly offer in GP practices. And while, as I've just said previously, that's wonderful, unfortunately, because autistic people, we see and interpret the world much differently to everybody else around us, that treatment pathway might not be appropriate for us. So we might need sort of questions that are tailored to us. A lot of us don't like, me personally, I don't like having like a one-to-one talking session with somebody, so counselling would never be appropriate for me because I have such bad anxiety, and I personally just don't like having that one-to-one with somebody else in a medical appointment. It causes me a lot of stress, a lot of unease. So a lot of autistic people probably feel the same, although there are exceptions and we're all different. It's a spectrum, so it affects us all differently. A lot of the time, things like cognitive behavioural therapies that are designed to help neurotypical people, they're not necessarily effective for autistic people, because a lot of the way our mind works is much different to that of our neurotypical peers. And coming back to what I've just said previously, a lot of signs and symptoms of autism in adults are the same as that as in children, apart from that we mask on top of that. So autistic adults, we might feel really anxious in social situations. I know I do. I'd rather be here in places like this on my own. We might avoid eye contact. I absolutely hate eye contact. It makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable and uneasy. It almost feels like you're looking into my soul, and so I might look away or look down or just briefly look at you and then look away, and that can be one of the signs of autism. Autistic adults, like autistic children, we can find it incredibly difficult to initiate and make friends with others and then maintain friendships. And sometimes we can take things really literally as well. And so if somebody's sarcastic to us, we might not understand that they're being sarcastic. And so autistic adults, like autistic children, are prone to bullying. And of course, it might seem that we're coming across as blunt or rude when we're not. It's just that we're very literal thinkers. And so as a result, we give literal answers back. And autistic adults, like autistic children, we love routine and structure, coming back to what I've just previously said. So a lot of us prefer to have sort of order in our lives and routine, and we get really upset if that changes. And let's not forget that as autistic adults, we probably likely struggled so much when we was younger. And of course, if you go for your autism assessment, one of the key areas that they concentrate on during that autism assessment procedure is looking at your past, so looking at your childhood history, which is why it's really beneficial sometimes to take a parent or a guardian or a friend or family member or somebody with you that knew you when you was a child, because the assessor concentrates on whether you played on your own as a child and whether you interacted with others. So say, for example, if your mum or dad or guardian or friend tried to initiate play with you, did you reciprocate that play? And in my case, I didn't. I preferred to play on my own. And actually, my dad was the same when he was younger. He preferred to play on his own. He didn't like to play or interact with his parents or other people, which is why we also, along with his doctor, believe that he has autism too. Which is probably why we get on so well, because we're both exactly the same and we see the world and feel the world and interpret the world the same. So we're absolutely a tight knit. We're very close, my dad and I, because we're very, very similar in terms of our beliefs and understanding of the world. But they'll look at everything that's happened in your youth, whether you've suffered from other mental health problems, whether you've had any employment issues as you've grown up, how you've coped in college and places, relationship issues. And so it's really it builds a foundation with regards to whether you could be autistic, because of course, if we're experiencing issues as a child, that doesn't just cut off when we get to 16 or 17. We continue to experience those problems into adulthood. It's just coming back to what I've previously said, and while you'll see it's important to this video, we're just so much better at hiding it. And it can be really difficult for autistic adults sometimes to seek advice from their friends or family or from the doctors or hospital setting in order to receive the appropriate support and advice. And again, that can be detrimental to our well-being, because then we go without adequate support and adequate family support our entire existence. And as a result, we can feel incredibly lonely. So if you've enjoyed this little video, please consider hitting like, commenting and subscribing, and I shall see you next time for my next vlog. Cheerio!